the first time you're installing a new offensive scheme since you took over.
Yep.
So is that the key, just getting your offense installed? Or
Yeah, so I think, Greg, kind of what I said is like we want to get the plays installed, make sure our guys know what to do. Okay, and we'll probably be a little bit slower, more in probably in the previous two. Well, we didn't get to the previous spring. Okay, in 21 is we really worked a lot of situational football. Probably be less of that offensively, more of just getting some reps with the plays, and trying to create some muscle memory, and then really focusing on the fundamental aspect of it, especially up front in the run game.
Going back to the COVID outbreak that you mentioned, roughly how many guys did that affect? And then
You know what, last year?
Yeah, and then how did that affect you? You mentioned that really, took a toll on you during the season. Any specific areas, the game?
Like the COVID deal was back in February, and so we had 30 guys out for I think 3 weeks there in February. We never had a shutdown, but we had it, and what we did is we just went to those really small workout groups again, kind of like we did the summer of 20. And so we did that through, if you remember, we pushed spring back last year. And so we went to those really small workout groups, and we weren't able to do these team workouts. So like in these team workouts, what you're trying to do is you're trying to put your guys, and I'm talking about in the winter workouts, you're trying to put your guys in as much pressure, all right, we have to overcome things mentally and physically as you possibly can. And so really we had one, all right, during the second workout, we got news that we had some positives, so we split out of it. And so what I figured out is like you don't get those back. And like we tried to overcome and do some things in the summer that we normally wouldn't do because we missed those workouts, but you don't get that time back. There's kind of there's a pattern of how you got to go through your season. You start with the winter, you go through spring, you go through summer, get into fall camp, then you get into your season mode. And we missed a significant piece of that winter. And I think it showed up as far as some detailed things and some mental toughness things that we weren't as good at as you hoped we would be in the fall.
How does the terminology aspect work with Graham and what you have now? Does it change a lot?
So really, he's got full control of it, John. So like, I think, and this is a good question for him because I don't want to answer for him. I think so. What he's basically done, he's came in and evaluated what we did here. And there were some things we did well. Now, it wasn't good enough as a total package, right? And I think some of that is he's going to give a new wrinkle to it. He's, I think his personality and his success and things like that. But what I think he'll do is, and I don't think I know, but he can answer this, is he's going to look and see what he felt really good about what we were doing and hold on to those, and then come in with the things that he's been really good at in the past and install those as well. From a terminology, though, it's all going to be his.
So it's going to be a learning component for some.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and we've been working on it. You get, I think, what the NCAA allows you 2 hours a week, and so he's kind of done a good job getting with the quarterbacks. And now we're 3 weeks in to really using that meeting time with our team, and so we're not necessarily starting at ground zero when we have first practice on March 22nd.
You mentioned obviously the talented and 7 scholarships. How much has that changed? In the last couple of weeks, where you guys are going to use those? You mentioned the linebacker now, obviously.
Yeah, not really. So, we've kind of been, defensively is kind of where our focus has been as far as with those allocations. Okay, we're going to use one on special teams. All right, we've got to get better at kicking the ball off. I think that's something that we've talked about. That's something that was a real struggle for us a year ago. It put us, our starting field position was one of the worst in college football, and so we've got to do a better job there. So that's definitely going to be one. And then defensively, like we've always had the intention to add a linebacker. Okay, so that hasn't changed, and that'll be a best available. We can do some things from a personnel standpoint. We can play as many as 3 in the game or as few as 1. And really still call most of our base packages. And then we want to add at least 1, maybe 2 pieces in the secondary. But I think it's important to see, like, we're going through the winter. And like all these young guys we have in the secondary, they've made improvements, but we need to see them play live football. And there'll be another wave of significant people, in the transfer portal after spring practice. And so our thoughts were, let's go through the spring. Let's see, may come out somewhere where we think we're going to have a potential need. Somebody may do better than we really anticipated. Okay. But it could be, hey, they're ready. to be a backup, maybe not a starter. Let's go find a starter. That's kind of how we're approaching it. Yeah, go on, Sam.
You mentioned the transfer portal. What are the challenges of that? You know, obviously, a lot of guys are leaving everywhere, but every situation's different.
So the thing is like, and y'all have heard me say this, and like, so I don't want to like repeat stuff I said. Like I'm not inherently against the transfer portal. Like I'm not. Like we're going to benefit. We're going to lose guys. Just like everybody in the country that decides to do business in there, you're going to gain some and you're going to lose some, right? What we got to get to is we've got to make roster management where it's really truly manageable, right? And so, and these are talks that are ongoing, whether it's in the AFCA, whether it's Shane on the at the NCAA level, is we've got to get into windows. Like we have to get into windows. First of all, let's call it what it is. It's free agency, right? And so, in what other sport do you have free agency year round? Well, that answer to that would be one, college athletics, right? And so we've got to get it into windows, and it has to be feasible for the student athlete and for the school. All right. So what you want is you want to have certain windows where the transfer portal is open and certain when it's closed, right? Just like free agency. And so the two periods that make the most sense for me is the month of December. Maybe it goes into January, mid-January. That's the first. It's postseason, so you don't have guys that are leaving your roster during the season. So it doesn't put your depth at a position. You don't have guys that are just walking out the door during the season. It opens the window December and January where, all right, you have signing day where you know what your number is going to be. You can use them accordingly. It gives those student athletes that are going in the portal opportunity to take visits during that time. And then you do it again some mid-April through the month of May, okay? And that way, again, you have an opportunity, if you have holes, to go fill those. You have an opportunity as a student athlete to take visits and then get into your new place in the summer where you have some ability to adapt as you go through the summer workouts. That's what makes sense to me. It's really hard in the current model that we have is to manage roster, okay? And I think you can do those windows without taking it away from the student athlete.
Neal?
Go.
Oh, yeah. How do you know, you're pretty analytical in your approach to almost everything. How have you approached the idea that people are leaving? Have you studied why they're leaving?
Yep.
And how have you and the coaching staff had to change in your dealings with players to accommodate that?
So what you do is you do your best assuming. I mean, honestly. So, and what I mean is you always have your roster, right? And this is something that you used to do periodically. Now you do it almost every single day. And so what you do is you have your roster, your scholarship roster, and you have potential flight risk, you know, because you have guys that for a couple different reasons. Maybe it's something going on at home they're having issues with that may cause them to leave. Maybe it's somebody that if they don't get a starting job, you know, that either them or their parents are going to really push them to leave. So you got to kind of anticipate. All right. Now you hope it doesn't happen. In most cases, you hope, not all cases, but in most cases, you hope it doesn't happen. But you still got a plan, right? The ones that are really hard are ones that come out of left field. All right. And to our credit, like we've probably had two of those that just I get a email from compliance saying somebody went over there, right? Because that's how it works. I don't think some people know that. Like 99% of the people handle it the right way, but sometimes you get like just notes from compliance, and that's what it is, right? But we haven't been blind. Like most of these aren't blindsided deals, right? These are things that you kind of anticipate, you kind of make plans and say, okay, hey, if this happens, then we need to be able to react this way. And now if it doesn't happen, then we don't have to. But am I making sense, Bob? Like you have it and you say, okay, these guys could potentially leave. All right, and then you try to make your plans. If they do, this is what we're going to do. If they don't, great. But that's kind of how you go about it.
What kind of problems, Josh in particular, I'm thinking of? I mean,
Yeah.
the guy.
Here's the thing. I think.
He's coming back, and then he left.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say is about this is like I think he's a good kid. I don't have anything negative to say, and I don't think it serves myself or our program to get up here and talk about guys that have left. And here's what I mean by that. Because, like, for whatever reason, he decided to leave, and we're going to coach the ones we got, right? And he made a decision. Now, the one thing about him is, like, I was surprised when he came back. You know, he came to me, sometime in December and said he was coming back. That was a surprise to me. And then I think his feelings changed over the course of a 5 or 6 week period, and he can answer to that. But we don't have any ill will toward him. But I don't think it does us any good, as myself as the head football coach or our football program, to come out and say anything glaringly negative about anybody that's leaving. I just don't think so. I'll turn 42 next week. You know what I mean? These kids, most of them are 18 to 22. It doesn't serve us well, right? So the attitude I've taken is, hey, we want to coach the kids that want to be here. And so let's take what we have and let's coach them up as best we can. Let's create a great environment where they're excited. And like I said, this isn't a knock to anybody that's left, but our locker room, man, like they're hungry. They're excited. Like they feel really good about what's down there. Okay, and it's our job as coaches to go add pieces to make us better. And we have the ability to do that with those 7 open spots.
It's a complicated problem. I get that. And I think a lot of people go, oh, fix it. Like, it's that easy, right? But is the simplest, it seems like redshirting kids is hard nowadays because why let them sit? They're going to go somewhere else. Do you have to play guys early now? Is there any, like, if-then scenario that you think may work?
Yeah. I think the redshirting is going to become less and less, and unless it's guys up front. We were able to do so with some secondary guys last year. And what happened is we didn't go into the year, Mike, really anticipating or planning to redshirt them. But what happened is as we went through the year, all right, a couple of those young guys like Caleb Coleman, Davis Mallinger, who's the third one? My mind's skipping here. Lamp. So we didn't really go into the year really anticipating redshirting them. But what happened is they weren't playing enough snaps. So when we got to the end of the year, my decision was, well, it's the right thing to do. Rather than play them in 5, it's better to redshirt them, right? And so, but I think now going back and looking, for the class that's coming in and moving forward, is we're going to be really more intentional about playing those young mids and skills more on special teams early. And making them prove that they're not ready rather than making them prove that they're ready on special teams. So now I think it's a little bit different, Mike, when you're talking about big guys, because some of those guys just aren't physically ready to go play from a weight or a strength standpoint. So I think you'll still see some red shirts in those bigs, but for us, and I think across college football, you're going to see less and less red shirting. I think we should evaluate the 5 for 5 rule. That's what I think. I think you get 5, you play 5. I mean, I really do. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it solves some of our roster management issues. That's not going to be a front burner issue, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it solves some problems.
January enrollees, who are you excited to see in the spring?
Well, I think that all of them put themselves in a position. I think the ones that probably stick out the most as far as, I'm intrigued to see how Nico, and not just because it's him, because any of the quarterback that comes in that has the resume that he has and then comes in and plays early, like I'm always intrigued. How fast does it take from a quarterback perspective for the game to slow down? And he played at a really good high school against really good competition, but he wasn't playing against teams like our defense, that he's going to see every day now. So I'm intrigued by him. I talked about Zyke Lawton. He's a guy that, he's really hungry because he redshirted last year at Cincinnati. And so and because we have some injuries up there of guys that are going to miss spring, is going to create an opportunity for him to really get a lot of reps for their first and second unit. On defense, Lee Koba, the guy he went to Syracuse. It didn't work out. He got humbled and he went down to East Mississippi Junior College. And now he's got this kind of new lease, and he never has a bad day. He's attacked workouts. He's really done a nice job learning. So I'm excited for him because, man, he's going to get so many reps. So we start March 22nd. How much improvement is he going to make through the spring game on the 23rd? Looking at I think the secondary pieces, I really feel like in this group between Aubrey Burks, Hershey McLaurin, Davis Mallinger, Lamp, Caleb Coleman, like somebody, probably 2 to 3 of those guys I'm going to be sitting here at the end of spring going, man, they're a little further ahead than I thought they were.
A couple of proposals to, again, limit a little bit more contact during the spring. Does that affect the way that you're doing things? And overall, does it affect the game? Is it having an effect on tackling?
to be honest with you, like all these that are coming along, most people have been doing them. Because, and the reason I say that is, like, your rosters in general just aren't what they used to be 10, 15 years ago. And it even goes back to, like, surgeries. You think about this, pre 15 years ago, how many labrum surgeries were there, right? There wasn't a ton, all right? And some of these, somewhat minor procedures to your knees, you just didn't see those a whole lot. So now, like, some of the things that happen over the course of the season and cause you to miss spring. And so, like, we're not going to go out. We won't have a scrimmage where we go out and scrimmage 150 snaps. Like, this is just not going to happen. You just physically can't do it anymore. So a lot of the rules that are going in place are just verifying what everybody's done, probably for the last 5 years from a spring ball perspective. So I don't know. Does it affect the game? I don't know. I mean, I think the product's still pretty good. I really do. I think when you watch it, I don't think that the common fan or even me as I'm watching an NFL game, because they've been practicing like this for a long time. You know what I mean? Those guys are they're not out seeking contact a lot during the week or during their OTAs or even during fall camp. And so I don't think it's affected the game at that level. I think early on in the season you see some tackling that's not as good as it should be, and I think that could be maybe a test, but I think it gets better as the year goes on too.
Quarterback is a natural leader position, and you've got 3 young guys. How do you approach that with them going into the spring, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, the good thing about those 3 is they're kind of alpha mentalities. Like if you were in there, John, watching that workout this morning, like a guy that would really stick out to you is Garrett Green. Like these change directions and those type of things and being rah-rah and having energy. Like if you had no idea who any of those kids were, you'd have been like, well, who's that? Who's that guy running around, And then, like, the way Nico and Goose both, the way they carry themselves, they kind of draw people, right? And you always want, like, at a quarter, I always talk about being a chameleon. You want guys that can really kind of, regardless of what group they're around, whether it's the receivers, whether it's the O-line, whether they're going to eat with a CEO or they're going to go to an elementary school, you always want those guys that are really kind of the face of your program. You want them to be chameleons, and regardless of what kind of the environment they're in, they still stick out, and they attract others, and all 3 of those have that rare ability. So I'm excited. They get along, which I think is important. I'm excited to see how they're going to progress with Graham leading them there, and hey, to the best man win the job.
If you do, I understand this is way down the road, but if you do go to the for a quarterback, parameters, that be somebody who has starting experience, someone who has multiple years left, 1-year guy, a young guy who has time to grow.
Yeah, so what I'll say this is, let's approach that when we get there, okay? So we're approaching in the spring like, hey, we're gonna these guys are gonna come out and somebody's gonna come and be able to win the job. If we get to that, then I think it has to be somebody that is an older guy that has significant experience. But that's not something that we're spending a lot of time on right now.
You mentioned Nick Troy for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think kind of gathered that he was still working his way back a little bit physically. He's subtly the most experienced guy in the whole secondary, and a guy that's been through a lot of adversity, obviously. How important is he to that room, just in terms of his leadership, his experience, and what he can pass on to some of those younger guys you were talking about?
Yeah, I think when you look at the secondary, so he has played now for really 2.5 years. And then Charles Woods has actually played more games, but I think 25 of those were at Illinois State, where he was previously. And Marcus Floyd, the same thing. He's played in almost 30 games, I think. You can check me on that. But as far as playing experience here, you're right. Nick Troy has the most. The thing that I think Nick Troy has is, like, he's a guy that's he's a great person, right? And so for him, he's coming back from this injury. He had a lower leg injury that caused him to miss every game since the bye week. He missed the last 7 games of the season. Our hope is that he gets released next week, and then what we'll do is we'll progress him into spring practice. Does that make sense? So, like, he's not going to go out for the first week or so and practice every rep. The hope is as we go through the spring, his load will continue to increase. But he's a guy that, with those young guys that we have in there, he's a guy that's played, and he's one of the better people, so they're looking to him. So he has that respect, even though he hasn't played, going back to the Baylor game.
Recruiting areas for the two new guys, and who takes over in South Florida?
Yep. So Tony's going to do that. Tony's going to take over in South Florida. He'll have that North Carolina area where he's from. And then Shadon's going to go, and he and Tony will both work at the South Carolina, which has been good to us. We'll work there. And then Graham's going to major in quarterbacks. Jeff Coons is going to go down into Columbus. Kenny threw this at me, so I'm kind of – I think that hits it. I think that's the main – any areas that you were thinking of? Okay. Anybody else? Greg? Anybody?
I want to hear real quick about
Yep.
Lynn J. How is he different? Size-wise, he's a different type of back than Letty was. And I guess Anderson would be the closest to size-wise to Letty. How does that change your running back?
Yeah. Well, Tony's probably, I don't know, inch and a half, but – Tony's up. He's 210 plus. I mean, yeah, he's a bigger, thicker kid. And the way Tony played in the bowl game and then against Kansas, I thought that showed real positive signs, right? And then Justin knew in the bowl game he was going to get more. And, like when you're going to play, like that changes a lot of things, right? And he took those bowl practices and you saw the steady improvement. So the way he played in the game was no surprise to me as far as how productive he was when on his few opportunities. And then Lynn J. So Lynn J. has really been a part-time player at Clemson, but really productive. I don't know if he ended this way. At one point, he had the most yards per carry of anybody that ever played at Clemson. It's just pretty impressive. I don't know if it ended that way, but I know at one point he was. And so he's got the ability to hit a home run, which – at any point, and he had some really long runs at Clemson. And then